So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. You are watching the My 30-Day World wrap party. And it's really the end of the Kickstarter sort of wrap party as well. Thank you for joining us. We're going to do some giveaways. We're going to do some world building. And we're going to just hang out and have a good time.
When you said, so let it be written, so let it be done, all I want to do was cut you off and say, on the way over here, I broke my thumb. That's what Andy Dwyer says in Parks and Rec when the doctor asks him all the things that are wrong. Anything else I can help you with? On the way over here, I broke my thumb.
A lot of people have called you Chris Pratt before.
They say you look like Chris Pratt.
I remember. Not untrue.
Not untrue in the right light. Turn those lights off and I'll look just like him. I do see it.
I'm Tim. This is my brother James. We are Tabletop Terrors. Tabletop Terrors is part of Absolute Tabletop, which is sort of our umbrella publishing company.
Absolute Tabletop is on the Earth, and the Earth is part of the worldwide, universe-wide consortium of Earths that are on the world. We're world building already. We didn't say it was good world building, guys.
No, we didn't. But we're going to check the chat. We're going to have a lot of conversations, and we want to hear about your world. We talked a lot about ours. And I was told by Mike Lasham as we were going live that we just hit 55,000. So we will get that update posted probably tomorrow as the Kickstarter is far from over. It's continuing to go further and further. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the description of this video, there's a link to our current Kickstarter that ends in like, what, 7 hours?
7 hours.
It's a Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. It's a campaign setting guide and world building toolkit for a dark fantasy realm. So once the dust settles, we'll get a proper update out and we'll get the graphic updated and reveal everything. But let's just have fun. Let's drink and be merry. So who's in the chat? Who's here with us right now?
Don. Hello, Don. And Peter. Peter, there is an accent in your name, and I really hope that it's pronounced Peter because I'm not even going to try anything else. Tomiko, hello, Tomiko. Thank you for the congratulations. Hey, Marquise, glad you're listening for a little while. You'll get to hear my brand new world. Fahad says congrats.
Thank you, Fahad. And hey, Marquise.
Mini Terrain Domain. Hola, nerds. Hola, Jake.
Hola, Jake from Mini Terrain Domain.
M Sixtail Shadow and DHJ. M Sixtail Shadow said part of a complete breakfast. This is pretty good. So, yeah. So,
and David Kegg is here. One of our concept artists from Storyforge.
Grayson Akins. I should probably stop trying to pronounce names. Grayson is here. Grayson A.
So My 30-Day World was an opportunity for everyone to get involved and think about particular facets of your world. There's a graphic floating around. If I was a good YouTuber, that graphic would be in the description. It is not. So
John Pintar's here.
John Pintar is here. What's going on, John? John is another one of our amazing artists. If you've seen any of the posts we've been sharing, you've seen work by David Kegg, John Pintar, as well as Alexander Kostic, Andre Torres, and Jake Perez.
RPG Construct is here. I did, in fact, absolutely miss him. I just saw... Actually, I didn't get that far. I hadn't scrolled down. I'm sorry. RPG Construct is here.
He's a non-scroller.
But he called this jerk faces, so I retract my hello, in fact.
Hey, he's not wrong.
Marquis said the video is down. Hopefully he's the only one that it's for. Yeah, vid is down. And back. I don't know what's happening, everybody. Hopefully it's working. This is all we have.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, video's back. All right. So, rather than go through all of the different prompts, what we wanted to do is throw it to you who are watching and talk about some of the things that we learned through this process. The graphic for My 30-Day World essentially asked various questions and specifically was designed to ask you about the various facets of your world, like talking about things that maybe you hadn't thought of, like things like taxes.
People are saying it's down again. We need to figure this out.
All right, hold on. Just wait. I have an idea. Okay, I know what I'm going to do.
That may or may not work because it's showing the Tabletop Terrors logo. So the problem is that the video is going down, but the sound looks to be here. So it looks like it can. Okay, he's just aborting. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it's the bandwidth.
There we go. Let's try that.
Hey guys, no overlay. Let's see if Hangouts is better.
Sorry. We were trying to use XSplit.
I do think that everybody heard us. It looks like just the video went out and they heard us. Hopefully, obviously they can tell us. But
all right, cool. Well, we'll see. It'll come back up here in a second. But thank you for hanging out. Okay, yeah, sounds great. So the audio is there. We're going old school. Yeah, we're keep going. So I think for us, one of these things that the My 30-Day World did was allow us to talk about facets of the world that maybe we're in kind of broad discussion, but sometimes asking a very specific question about a very specific part of the world will give you clarity in one area, and then that clarity spreads out. So you start to ask these questions, and then when you answer, well, how do tributes work in my world? Or how does, let's say, travel? Is travel dangerous? It's usually sparks all these various ideas. So yes, travel is dangerous because X. And then you start thinking, well, that means this. Oh, and then I need this, this group who guards the roads. And so usually when you figure out one detail, it can spider web out and you can figure out multiple details. And I think that that is what we saw happening in the group. We had tons of people participate, tons of people who said they didn't even know about their world when they started, now have a really clear picture. And I think that that's super rad.
Marquise is here for the giveaways based on what he's saying. And JD Bugman says, you guys are killing it with the videos. Keep up the good work. That's great.
Thank you, man. Are we back with...
Oh, yeah. Everybody said that it was back, I believe. Let me check live here. Yeah. And they said it was much clearer. I think we're having that same problem.
Yeah,
XSplit's always
XSplit's doing its thing. So,
no, thank you.
So let's go to the chat and let's talk about some questions. If you participated in My 30-Day World, what did you learn about your world? What was something that through this process you figured out? What question?
I want to answer that question first.
Tell me.
Not so much what I learned about a world, but that I learned about a world that I was very excited about. Yes, Mornblade will be giving away some PDFs at some point. Not sure when. This is going to be about an hour stream or hour and a half, maybe. Yeah. Not sure. But and Marquise is here to derail the chat and steal ideas. I mean, yeah, that's
stereotypical Marquise. It's his name.
But the thing I was going to say is Tomiko is here, and her world, I believe it was called Gabbo's World.
Yeah,
was some of the best posts for My 30-Day World.
It was amazing.
The Goblin posts were just so good, and I really, honestly hope to see more from that world, even if it keeps the same tone of very tongue-in-cheek kind of joking. And I think a lot of people were interested in running and playing games in that because it just seems like the perfect kind of world, even if it's goblins taking, in a not understanding maybe the whole world they're in. I can just see it going so many ways. It seems like
I think it was called Yucktown was the name of it.
Yucktown. Oh, okay. Yucktown. Oh, Gabbos is what the
Gabbos is the
Yucktown.
Yeah, Yucktown. Man. And so if you're wondering what we're talking about, it's a really clever idea. It's Yucktown, and all of the lore is through the sort of framing device that it's from Gabbo, and it's written from the perspective of a goblin, and it's really good. If you want to see those posts, make sure to join the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. And in that group, you can go through and search the My 30-Day World hashtag, or you could search Gabbo or Tomiko's name, or
I think if you
any of those things, or Yucktown, any of those things. Which Yucktown was spelled with just a K, not a CK.
Something that I thought was very interesting is Marquise said, I learned my world bored me. Not even joking, helped me focus on a different set of projects. I think that's another thing that it allows you to push through and see what your world can be, is, or maybe isn't. It not only does it allow you to create in your own world, but it makes you realize, oh, because of this question, I realized that this other decision I made won't make sense down the road.
Exactly.
Or like you said, oh, that isn't as cool as I once thought, because now that it's been a little bit extrapolated, it's not what I thought, so let me rethink it. Or in your case, work on different projects and stuff. So
exactly,
another great thing for that.
Yeah, totally. And then Jake had a thing. He said, what surprised me most is that I'm not interested in creating my own world. I'd much prefer playing another world. And that's great. That is something huge to figure out. And it's awesome. I mean, it's because you know what, Jake, I've played in your games. I've watched your games. When you use other people's worlds, you use them and make them your own anyway.
Yeah.
And so any mini terrain domain stuff that I've seen for Harbinger or any of that stuff, or what Drake, the RPG construct, does with Dragon Grin, what you guys do is make it your own anyway. So it's like a really cool cover song is kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
So killer.
Peter said, let's see now. I learned that, and I'm sorry, Progonos is world. Progonos, maybe. I'm really sorry. I'm bad at pronunciation.
Hit us with a big fat phonetic.
Progonos is even more dangerous and grim than it ever was intended to be. Another same kind of thing. Like you said, you don't realize things about your world, or at least I didn't realize things about my world until I ran games in it. or did stuff like this where you're prompted. I feel like it's the same kind of thing.
Sure.
Where the idea is when you run games in your world, or even if you were to say play a game in a world that you wanted to know more about, it requires you to answer questions that you didn't think of before, almost always, where the players are like, well, would there be some, what would we be drinking in the bar here?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I didn't think about it. In the same respect, it allows you to, you know, kind of realize that both about your worlds and other people's worlds if you do a thing like this where there are prompts.
Yes.
Same kind of thing. It's like a player saying, well, what's the Pantheon like, you know?
And one of the things that I think it was Nicholas Delancey said when we first posted the graphic with the 30 questions, he basically said, this is like our book, Be a Better Campaign Master Book 1, but like a junior edition, because it asks very specific questions. And so, like you're saying, sometimes when you have to answer those things, the answer can be, I don't like this world. I don't want to do this. Or I don't want to make my own world. I just got to say this name. This is like if the Warhammer world was like an 80s detective show. He's like, Agent Sigmar Malarski. Because you know why? Because I hear the police chief going, Malarski. So,
and a Sigmarite walks in and he's in the full gold armor.
But he says, I was building my own world. But now with that wonderful Dragon Grin setting book coming, I guess I'll just use your work. Perfect. That's why we're doing it.
Another person, Demonitria 13, I think, again, very sorry. I'm hoping this book actually helps me with my world that I'm calling the Tattered Tome of the Shattered City. Very cool name. It is a war-torn, I'm sure it meant. War-torn world with only one sanctuary for those against fighting. Another cool thing about this book is not only will it inspire you, the Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin, but for us, at least, especially, it has what I think are a few cool templates in a way where you're like, all right, so take a city. And if you were to take the rough idea of what we're going to do for the region template and maybe fill some of it in for your own world, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that drawing of circles. It's like having a prompt of like, oh, what's something deadly? What's something dangerous? What's something beautiful? Just these little tidbits that you can kind of, when a player, you tell your players, hey, we're going to this new place. Okay, well, what's it like? Read this 2 pages of kind of, it's not paragraphs, it's not walls of text. It's
bulleted stuff.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, just cool ideas. All right, my character would probably want this or this. And
sure.
Same, it should definitely help people, you know, make their worlds.
Yeah, you could essentially, in the same way that our last book, Oath of the Frozen King Adventure Kit, was so that you could run an adventure on the fly. A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin essentially is going to be set up to where you can have Dragon Grin in its canon, but you could also build a world sort of on the fly and reskin the pieces and the modular parts. So absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, they corrected that it was war-torn. I just always feel like I'm misreading everybody's comments. So anytime there's a typo, I'm like, wait, am I crazy? Or so?
And Bromos, Sunstar Ranger, says, I love world building. So do we. I love it too. And if you are interested in world building, one of the best places to do it is the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. It's just a lot of really creative
Sigmar said, that's a funny feeling when someone is having a laugh about your Slav last name because he said it's not from Warhammer.
Oh, yeah.
That's his name.
I know. Listen.
Oh, well, Malarski in this case.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, so that is amazing.
Chad Nick is here. What's going on, Chad? My buddy. Hey there, guys. I'm so proud of you guys, and I'm excited to get that book in my hands and game with y'all. Thank you, man. We are excited, too. Thank you so much.
Patrick plans on slowly introducing the Copper Jackals into his game sessions to see if the party enjoys it. Another cool thing.
Yeah, very cool.
Kind of just have, that's another thing about the book is that you don't have to be running Dragon Grin to use it. While it will generally follow a tone of kind of dark fantasy, and if you're, say, playing in a more lighthearted Fae game, you might have to reskin a little more stuff.
Yeah.
But it will still have a bunch of really cool encounters, really cool faction ideas, really cool just like wonders, a lot of things that you can kind of pick and choose and just slide into your world when you're playing with your, you know, players, your home game, if you're running a game online.
Yeah. It's a really surreal thing because James and I have sat in this very room from the beginning talking about what Dragon Grin is and figuring out what it looks like and the shape of it. And you moved it, but there was an old map of Dragon Grin.
Oh yeah, it's in my binder.
It's like just all of those things. So to see how an idea develops and how something starts off and how much it can change, that sort of leads into the next comment there. Did you see the comment?
I was going to say, we're getting a lot of comments, but yes, I did.
See Grayson, I think.
Yeah.
Grayson Akins.
Was that the one learning that there were a lot of things you wanted to change
Yeah.
or rework?
Basically, that is something that we learned too in writing this book, because there are some high-level ideas, but when other things become clear, they inform other world-building ideas. And so you have to kind of tighten them up so that every cog spins.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And as you kind of like, all right, let's do a test. Oh, this doesn't work anymore because we swapped out some pieces here. So this thing that was awesome, we got to change it.
In programming, we call that unit testing.
There
You always run a unit test to see, hey, did changing this break anything else?
So there you go. So unit testing for world building is something that you have to do when you make progress in one area.
Yeah.
Because the thing that you've decided could very easily inform other things.
Exactly. So Micah says, Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin to me feels like a new Dark Curse of Strahd meets Dark Sun, but with massive changes that make it unique.
I'll take it. That's awesome. Thank you.
Decepticam. Oh, it moved. Oh, boy.
Decepticam.
Yep, I've lost my mind. I mean, my spot in the chat. Decepticam, finally catching a live one in a while. So glad you're here. Back Dead Man's Guide a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you.
So stoked for it. Also a little scared to see all of the other bits creeping in those brains of yours in a good way. I think you're really going to love the... do we announce the name? No, right?
No.
Our new adventure kit. I almost just announced it, so I'm glad. Our upcoming adventure kit, everybody that backed Dead Man's Guide is going to get sort of a first look at it when we have it's a little more formed.
Yeah.
And I think you're really going to like it.
It's awesome. We're really excited about it, but it's written. It's done. Because we are so inspired that we can't not. We're like, oh, let's write another adventure kit. There's also going to be something else sooner than the adventure kit that we're also really excited about.
Very different.
Very, very different.
Very exciting.
It's going to be something new from us. So we've got 2 new products that they're pretty much finished. It's just a matter of releasing them and put some finishing touches. But yeah, so we're really excited. And again, if you're watching this, we're doing a wrap up of the My 30-Day World Building Challenge for our Kickstarter, A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin. If you haven't backed it, consider doing that. There's a link in the description right now, and you can go get a hardcover book. It's like this fat for $55.
There's only about 7 hours left, so keep in mind that this is the very end. This is the wrap party for almost the wrap party for the Kickstarter.
It's 4:47 p.m. Eastern as I stream this right now.
Zero Cage says he's totally running Dragongrin on Roll20. That's awesome.
Oh, sick. Send me some links to that stuff, man, if you're recording it. If not, but yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. And let me know if you have any questions about the world. We'd be happy to help you with that stuff.
Agent Malarski says, I run my players through Out of the Abyss right now, and they are so going to dreadfully love Dragongrin after that. That's really cool.
Yes.
John can't wait to get his hands on that map. Oh, the map. He's talking about the map. Hopefully, John, you never see that map.
What he means is he can't wait to get his hands on it to draw it. Because John is going to be one of the people who creates the map. And we already have an idea. But yeah, the one that we have now in that binder is actually a really interesting exercise in world building and how sometimes we keep things too compartmentalized.
Yeah.
The picture of the map, all of the different land masses are islands mostly. That is just because in our head, it's like, no, this is over here and this is here and this. And it's like, no, you want conflict?
Put it all together.
Put it all together. Make it smaller. Make it so that it's easier to get back and forth and things of that nature.
Micah says, congratulations.
Thank you, Micah.
Bromo says, where does dungeon/wilderness/city, etc. dressing fall in the world building schedule for you guys? And random roll table list making. So I am assuming that he means in the context of Dead Man's Guide.
Sure.
Which touches on the schedule, which we have a rough idea of the schedule. But I guess what I'll say is maybe not entirely answering your question, but hopefully.
Sure.
Each of the regions does have roll tables for stuff like that.
Yes.
And as we go through the regions, I mean, we're going to do them for all of the regions. So while we do have that scheduled, they
need to be edited. They need to be so put it this way.
Yeah, we're going to write a lot of them, I guess, is kind of
so here's the way that it works. To give you an overall picture of how we're going to handle that. Taking cues from Harbinger, really, which is I love the feeling of being in space. Like we talked about it. It's like just going into space is a feeling of like just this danger and the unknown. So taking that sense of danger and the unknown, putting it into the realm of Dragongrin in this way. The rough working thing we have now is there are places that are labeled either frontiers or vestige. Vestige basically just means it is less deadly than the frontier. Those are like settlements, cities. The roll tables that you'll find in a vestige is very different because it's more like city sort of challenges, things that would be in that particular region. So that magistrate or this tax collector or these marrow who work for the dismembered lord. But when you go into the frontiers, there's a lot more. It's not just worrying about the dismembered lord. If you go into the frontiers here, it's these crazy creatures or this cannibalistic tribe of goblins or the things are much crazier. So depending on where you're at, there's different roll tables. Very simple. And there's a little more to it than that, but that's the basics of how the wilderness versus the city. There will be tangible ways to tell those things apart as a player.
There will be blood.
There will be
blood.
I'll drink.
So what I'm going to do
is
I'm going to grab a couple of questions. So basically what I want to do is I want to get caught up on the chat and then go back to questions so that we can just kind of filter some stuff out. We're getting a lot more than I thought. So we have some good ones. The one, an interesting one I thought was Mark said, congrats on the Kickstarter. Finally, some context for page 10 and 11 of both of the Frozen King. Yay for the Copper Sun. I think we mentioned the Copper Sun in that.
We do.
But we never really talked about it too much anywhere else. So
we give it just a little kiss.
So that is very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, man, I keep doing that thing where I scroll and then I lose my spot.
No, you're good. So here's what I want to do. We are going to do some giveaways. So I'm trying to basically do it so that we do more. I want to make sure we don't get to the end and then do a bunch. So I want to do them in between. I think...
what are you doing in between? Oh, the giveaways?
Yeah, rather than do them all at the end, I wanted to do some now. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you if you are a winner, we'll jot down your name, send an email with your name to absolutetabletop@gmail.com, letting us know that you won the contest. And then we can take care of it. So the first one I want to give out is actually to Bromos, Sunstar Ranger. That was a really good question. Where does dungeon, wilderness, city dressing fall in the world and world building and stuff like that? So Bromos, Sunstar Ranger, we're going to be giving you a copy of our world building guide. It is called Be a Better Campaign Master, Book 1, Building the World. And so if you email absolutetabletop@gmail.com, we will get you a code so you can download that book. So congratulations.
So Mini Terrain Domain says he can't wait to mash it into Harbinger/Dragongrin/SpongeBob. I've said too much. And then later, Chad says, who lives in a pineapple under the Ozen Seas, dismembered Baromix. So that was a very good one. So we do have a bunch of pretty good questions here. Mornblade Gaming asks, is there references to the Sea Jacks in Dead Man's Guide? And I'm reading that one because I didn't have the other ones pulled up, and that's relatively quick because we talked about that.
Yes, absolutely. So we made a decision, and it could change before the time the book's published. That's what editing's for. But the Sea Jacks have essentially all been killed for the most part when Dead Man's Guide begins. So there's sort of an era when you get the Copper Jackals book that's available on our website now. It's basically right before Dead Man's Guide begins. So the Copper Jackals have a heyday, but then in the current state, it will be much more rare for a Copper Jackal, a lot like the Jedi. Yeah. So there's a few, but
there's not a bunch of chapters
exactly
like in Copper Jackals.
It's more of like a legacy hero thing where you can read tales of the chair kickers or the murdered muse in some of the chapters, but it would be more like a ragtag group. So very limited number of Copper Jackals, but they'll definitely get a mention.
So Bromo said thank you, and of course you're absolutely welcome. But we wanted to every time, as much as possible, recap. He needs to send an email to absolutetabletop@gmail.com
within the subject line. What do you want it to say?
Winner. And then just say, hey, I'm Bromos from the YouTube chat, and then we'll send you your code once we get all this. But I just wanted to keep reiterating that 'cause it's hard if I don't know. It's hard to get from YouTube to you.
No, exactly. And so real quick, world building thing, the Dismembered Lord uses this thing called a crucible to monitor the time discrepancies, like the space time. I like to think that is a mixture of like tome hearts and Copper Jackals. Like they're Titan Copper.
Yeah.
So he's basically killed a lot of them to make this crucible, is my headcanon. And that would be crazy because you'd see these, like the pieces of the crucible would be like these mangled tome hearts and then a femur with copper, maybe a couple Copper Jackal skulls with like so I think that would be kind of cool.
Yes. Oh yeah. All right. So, Don says, general world building question. Do you start small, city/town, and expand, or do you go with the geographical area and run from there?
What about you?
So I am going to like just turn left at the question, turn left at Albuquerque and go around the question. For me, I tend to world build the most, kind of like we talked about, with either prompts or more specifically when I'm running a game. I'll have a rough idea. So what that means usually is I'll start where the players are, which means relatively small scope. Likely without even an idea of what the region is. If it's a world I've made, obviously there's a map of the region. I'll know
Sure.
where they are on that map. But if I was starting from scratch, I start where they are, and then I build the places they can and might go. I will almost never build a city on the other side of the world for that session because they probably won't go there. Sure. Outside of that, like I said, I tend to try and follow prompt because it really gets me going more than sort of staring at a blank piece of paper.
I agree. So if you're writing a book, it's very different than if you're running a game. If you're writing a book, if in the books we write, I start very big geographical area. And I'm like, okay, what is the elevator pitch for this area? Why is it cool? Why would players go there? And sort of say, okay, cool. It's going to be this sort of, and use other pieces of media. Like a lot of our stuff will be a meta description of other things that inspire the region. So like for Uldane, it's like Mad Max meets Australia meets Scrappers. Like it's just that kind of thing. Because when, you know, James, Barker, Matt, when they hit that dock, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So then they start their putting. If you're running a game, you need to have this. There's a session you start with called a session 0. And it can basically just be as simple as having lunch with your players and just saying, hey, guys, what do you think would be cool? So that you're on the same page with that. And then from there, I would start very small. The place where they begin, and only world build what you need to out from there. Because your time is limited, their time is limited, and you're not writing a book. You're playing a game. So that 2 different approaches for 2 different reasons. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so I'm going to get to questions in order. So if you ask a question and don't hear it answered, I'm sorry if you miss it. It will be in the long one, but we're getting a lot more than usual. So we're going to kind of go in order. I'm going to try to make that relatively fair.
Awesome.
Demonitria said, I really hope I'm saying that right. In my world, I plan on making an elemental golem race named the Core, singular, or Cori, plural. They are earth golems that eventually gain sentience through the years of magical exposure. Good idea? I think it's a great idea. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's a really cool way to explain them, and yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Micah says, my 30-day world inspired me to make the...
Well, hold on. I want to say real quick.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that I think is really cool about that is that if they've been around for a long time, that would upset a lot of things. Them gaining sentience, essentially. So it would be like if, you know, the robots in our tech, like if all the computers that we're using gain sentience, we'd all be kind of up a creek because we use them for everything. So what I would recommend is figure out what those golems are doing. Like what's their job and make it something important.
Yeah.
Like they harvest food or they guard the water supply, whatever, so that when they gain sentience, it's really a big deal and there's an uproar. That would be my only recommendation because society changing like that is a really cool kind of conflict hotbed.
Yeah. Grayson says, as outside the questions, he says he came up with a crazy theory about the Crucible and Randall, my character from Those That Remain game. It's a bit lengthy, so I might post it in a group later. Cannot wait to see it later.
Do it.
Grayson.
Oh, I love that.
But Micah said my 30-day world inspired him to make a my 30-day culture, but also some concepts for 5e, which would fit it, and how his own system might handle running it, either run it in 5e and in Farad as well. The thing is my 30-day world is very cool, but it is ripe for a bunch of other questions. A good example, the book we're giving away, at the bottom of every page of Campaign Master 1, Be a Better Campaign Master Volume 1, there's a question about your world. Some of them are very wide scope, some of them are very small scope, but it's kind of one of the places we got the inspiration for my 30-day world from.
Exactly.
Because one time, I think we did a stream or maybe a podcast or something where we just answered some of those questions about Dragon Grin.
Yeah.
And it was crazy.
Yeah.
Because we helped write some of those questions and we never even considered answering them. So
right.
It was very cool. Sigmar Malarski. Will there also be possibilities for players to have a castle in Dragon Grin? Like a paladin getting / building his stronghold? I know it might be hard with all the marrow around. Well, I was going to say, so I think absolutely. I think your exact example is a lot less likely, but a paladin that's maybe not so nice would absolutely have a castle there, and he'd have Marrow guarding it.
That's what I was just going to say. It depends whose side you're on.
Exactly.
If you're serving a Lord of Ash, which is one of the sort of like proctors of the area for these members.
They're the governors, basically.
Right. If you're serving one of them, yeah, you can have a castle. But those that would rise against the dismembered lord would likely not. But so that's an interesting thing. What would you do? What would your players do in a campaign? What would you be capable of to earn a castle? But the answer is yes, absolutely. I love stuff like that. And we're building the world and writing the book in a way that you can run virtually any game in it. And so I would love to see a campaign, and it could be 6 sessions, it could be 10, but the goal is rising from the muck and the blood. There's someone who decides to be a paladin of the dismembered lord, and his goal is to redeem his family's name and get a plot of land. And that's it. Already I'm like, all right, cool. Session 1, let's do this.
Yeah.
The tax collector shows up and you owe X amount of money. You can't have land. Maybe the first session is your land getting stripped from you.
It's the beginning of Robin Hood Men in Tights. But way less funny.
No, it's just as funny for different reasons. A chew, son of a
Your arms. You lost them in the war. I can't say the next line, actually. So going back to some comments that people had, Dr. Professor Sir said, I was really inspired with what you guys did with the regions and races in Dragon Grin. I just spoke about it for 40 minutes on AbTab group. Would like to hear how you guys did character building. Well, I was going to say one of the My 30-Day World videos, or maybe 2 of them, covers that really well. But I think the idea that he's getting at is for Dragon Grin, we went with a few things that I think are really clever, which one of them is half-kin, where most of the player races can be half one thing and half another, which I think creates a lot more sort of cultural conflict potentially. Like, you know, there's always the half-elf, but that's it. But now there's a lot more half-kin. And then we have the Morden, who are like sort of all our evil races, the dark dwarves, the dark drow, stuff like that. Well, the
all
dark
wrapped
elves,
in.
the drow.
Yeah.
And then there's the Sarek, which are probably one of my favorites. The Sarek and the Tome Hearts, which are sort of 2 brand new player races. The Sarek is more of a template that goes on top of other races.
Exactly. Well, but and to add to this, something that we did that I'm actually really proud of, we've divided up very differently how sub races work within a race. And you're going to see this if you're part of the production diary. If you back the book, you're going to be able to get access to this early. But we're making it so that without it being complicated, not every single dwarf who is a mountain dwarf has poison resistance. And it's going to be very simple the way we handle this. But you're going to see we're dividing culture from race so that there's not monoculture races is really what we're trying to avoid. And that means that take examples like the Uldane who live in that place that I was describing before, real like bleak.
Notice you didn't say a race after that.
No.
The Uldane are everybody that lives in Uldane.
And that's the point, right? So take the Uldane and say gnomes can live there. So what we're doing is we're breaking it off into cultures. So our sub races are going to act more like cultures. So the Uldane could have gnomes, elves. So already we're opening that door. So if in Dragon Grid you want to be an Uldane halfling, you take those 2 things and put them together. I think that's cooler than you're a halfling. You're from this place.
So that means your culture is this.
Right.
Because I'm like, yes, I'm from the southern United States, but I'm not what most people would consider, you know, from the South.
Exactly.
I mean, the simplest example.
Right. So that's how we're handling it. And I think it's going to be tonally awesome because that also is like in a dark realm, people have to band together. So you're going to see more places that's like, no, yeah, we're all together, whether you're gnome, halfling, dwarf.
So we have a bunch more questions, but I absolutely have to read what Jake said. He's getting ready to kickstart the Breadman's Guide to Dragon Green. The main antagonist is the dismembered loaf, a carbo lich, and his army of muffins.
Jake, listen to me. Listen carefully to me. It's probably not likely that there isn't an Absolute Tabletop book you own. But you email absolutetabletop@gmail.com and we will send you a copy of any of the books that we make.
That are released.
That are released. You will get a download code because that is one of the most amazing things I have ever seen. And you may or may not see art for that at some point.
Oh, that'd be the best. So Decepticam says that is honestly the most inspirational part of your recent videos, cultures versus races. That really bottles you into a tiny possibility of what your character could be.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's like outside of Dragon Grin, I think that idea will be able to sort of be templated and transferred to other places. And if I say make a world in the future, I would absolutely pilfer that idea whole cloth.
Of course.
Like, yes, well, I'm using it. That's amazing.
And we've talked about that as AdTab is like, when we develop something cool, that's just the way we do it now.
Yeah.
In our books going forward. In fact, there have even been talks, I won't spoil the title, but there have even been talks from Michael Barker himself about using A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin as the template for the Ankea book. And that makes me happy in my heart.
And other places. So I answered that one. Okay. Here's something I always wondered. This is from Peter. When you're putting together a bestiary, do you make up a monster first and ask for the art later, or do you ask for the art first and make up stories for them? So, interesting story. To start at the beginning, there was a time when we first started, before Absolute Tabletop, we were Tabletop Terrors. And the way that we started making books was we approached artists who had art online and said, hey, we don't have any money to pay you to do art. We don't know how well this is going to go, but we want to make some books. So can we use your art? And if we do eventually make money on them, just give you a percentage. And a few of them said yes. In this way, we had a few pieces of art where we're like, all right, let's make up a cool story for why this guy has a cool hand on his chest. You know, why does he have that bow? Why does this guy look like this? Why is this monster like that? And so we don't usually do that.
Right.
But we did that for a while, and it was kind of a really interesting, fun exercise, I think.
Yeah. It was.
But most often, say if we were making a monster, we'd come up with the idea, tell the artist about it, and then there's still a lot more between there, I think is the important part.
Sure. Everything that he's saying is stuff that we wouldn't be a company if we didn't start that way.
Yeah.
So I'll start by saying whatever is going to get you a monster at the end.
Yeah. It certainly works both ways.
It works both ways. What most commonly happens, like he's saying, is we'll say, okay, here's what we need. If you've seen the Kickstarter page, there's two creatures, the beasts of the
behemoths of the bleak.
Behemoths of the bleak, thank you, that we've unlocked. One of them is called the Kawar or the Kavar, to incite pronunciation wars. But that creature, I gave a description to the artist. Then the artist sends something back. And then what we'll do is based on the art, because they'll get inspired and add things.
Exactly.
We'll change and dial in the lore to focus on the art. In fact, the best example of this is the Typhon.
Yeah.
Alexander Kostic made this amazing sort of third eye, because I said, hey, it would be cool if they had a third eye. Well, he was extremely creative, and instead of putting it right in the forehead,
the head where we all probably thought it should go.
Exactly what I thought. He made it this sort of crown, this ethereal glowing thing that totally, the lore changed entirely. But now the Typhons are so much more unique. So we gave him the description of, it's a mammalian sort of mammal dragon. It's a bear with membranous wings, but bear fur and a third eye. Stag antlers. He did all that, and then he goes, check this.
Exactly. So the idea is we often make the monster first, give it to the artist, but then, like I said, there's a lot more building that goes in there because we go back and forth, and then we come out at the end with, oh, this. Another thing is we got concept art done, and in some cases, even if it wasn't like, that's exactly what we're looking for. It's like, well, that's something else in Dragon Grin now.
Yep.
You know, like, oh, that's not what we thought, but that'd be really cool if it were just this other monster.
Yes.
So a lot of in the middle ground.
And I will say this, it's because we work with artists who share the same creative language as us and inspirations and tastes, which is really, really, really important.
Yes.
So I would recommend that you design your workflow, hopefully using those pieces, but not every artist is going to come back with those cool things. And sometimes there are things that the artists add that I have to say, actually, can you make it more like this?
Yes.
So, but it's a fun process.
It is. So Zero Cage asked, will you guys write any fiction for Dragon Grin in short/long story form?
Yes.
Absolutely. No question. Somebody later mentioned, I think Chad Nick mentioned, oh, he can't wait. That'd be really cool. And it's like the Harbinger short stories. I think the main thing is we started making RPG books, but as soon as we have the leeway, I'd say, is maybe a good word, to do that, I think absolutely you'll see a lot more fiction from a lot of worlds.
Yeah.
Because I think we're all really excited about that kind of stuff.
One of the main things I would love to see, and this is just, we're talking about fun stuff, so I'm just going to throw it out there. I'd love to see a Dragon Green comic book. I'm a huge comics fan, surprise. So that's one of my favorite mediums to tell stories on, and I've never had one of my comic books published, though I've written many. But the reason why I say that is because I think it would be really cool to do a comic series that was called either Fractals or Fragments or something like that.
Bleak Shards. Wait, what's it called?
Yeah, any of that where it's essentially, excuse me,
all the burps that Tim has,
and that was suppressed.
Every burp is
that was like with a silencer on. I was like, no, but it's with the Dismembered Lord stealing people's days. I think it would be really cool. It's basically their last day, their last story, and so it's really these really interesting stories, but they always end in the person dying. And doing a small short story series on that, basically either that or them becoming a Sarek, but it's Stolen Days. Maybe that's what it'd be called, like Stolen Days, Chronicles of the Dismembered Lord. But I think that would be one really ripe, like Twilight Zone-esque way to do a bunch of weird fiction in Dragon Grid.
And Leiden. Oh man, more names, guys. How do you make your players see the point of having session 0? So the easiest way to make your players see the point of having session 0 is start the game, and when they say, "Wait, this game is what now?" you go, "Well, this is why we want a session 0." Probably the better way to go about it is just to mention, like, "Hey, guys, I just don't even really call it what it is or whatever. Just kind of hang out with them and say, I just want to talk about what you guys are looking for.
Sure.
Just play it cool, make it casual." I think.
Right.
If they just don't want to do it and they really want to jump in, at least say, "Hey, can we just have a conversation about, what we all want from this game so there's no sort of confusion?"
Sure.
And I'm like, if they're not in for that, I'm like, I don't know.
If you know your friends well, then you'll have the sort of, everybody has their friend language. You know what I mean? All your inside jokes, all that fun stuff that you secretly think could be made into a TV show, but that only really your friends would think is funny. We're the same.
Everybody has that.
Everybody has that.
Everybody has that.
So you will know what food they don't like. You'll know the friend that doesn't like mushrooms or doesn't like olives or can't eat cheese because they're lactose intolerant. I think that's a really good thing to do. If they question the point, if you just casually, like James said, like, "Hey, in the same way that, how we all love hanging out together, but, Joe can't eat cheese and Todd hates mushrooms, and that I can't stand blue cheese, but how we always still figure out a place to eat? How we always still figure out meals that we all love? I want to do that for our game."
Exactly.
And if you use it in that way, it'll make a lot of sense because that's real life. You know where your certain friends won't eat. You don't even suggest it if you're with that friend, and so on.
And even to rein it in more, because you mentioned this to me once before, often people don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want.
Right.
The best analogy for this is pizza. If you're ordering for pizza for 8 people, don't ask everybody what they want. Say, "Hey, what is absolutely a no-go for you on pizza?" "Oh, I really hate black olives. Everything else is fine." Because everybody says everything's fine. My mom did this the other day. "Oh, anywhere." And I was like, "All right, I want to hit up, let's go to Taco Bell." She's like, "Oh, I don't want Mexican." I was like, "Well, why didn't you lead with that? You said anywhere."
I want anything but Mexican.
So a very succinct, small session 0 is, "Hey, guys, what is the last thing you'd want to see in this game?" "All right, great. We'll avoid all those things."
Right, exactly. And those are also, you can call those red lights as well. Like one of my yellow lights or really red lights is, I just don't like to see kids get hurt in RPGs. It can happen, but I don't want to visit it in graphic detail and linger.
Yeah, you don't want that to be one of the major themes.
I don't want it to be the theme. So it's like, "Oh wow, children died." It's like, well, that's going to happen, especially in like Dragon Grid. It happens every day. But I don't want a descriptive scene of a child dying.
Yeah, let's not focus on that. Exactly.
Right. So it can be handled tastefully. But yeah, that would be how I would bring up session 0.
Yeah. Mark says, "How would you handle something like a faction turn?" I don't know what this means, but I know Stars Without Number is a game. He says, "CF, Stars Without Number." I don't know what that is. In your Dragon Grid game, i.e., how do you make the faction in the world come alive for your players? So the important thing is, I don't think either of us know what a faction turn is.
I think if I'm thinking of it right, it's basically, I've seen something like this in Pathfinder in the sort of mini game where you can run the city and build a city. A faction turn, correct me, is essentially the faction gets to move, quote unquote, in the realm and gain notoriety or resources or a stronghold or stuff like that. Am I on the right page? Basically, the faction acts around them.
This question was like a million years ago, so we're going to answer the question as though we do or don't know. But specifically,
well, I'm just throwing that out there, but I have an answer.
How do you make the faction in the world come alive for your players?
I would cheat. I would cheat. I'm running a game, and I like to do what I call scene sequels, which is, okay, we had these scenes. What's the sequel?
He said, what the faction does, yes.
Okay, perfect. So I start without the faction, and then I think, okay, what's the sequel to this thing? Meaning the players stole something. What's the repercussion? What's the thing that happens after? Okay, well, I need him to get caught. Or at least that's what's going to be the challenge. They can get away from it. Yeah. Then I just plug in the faction that makes the most sense. That is related to the characters. So I personally, I have things that are going on in the world, but if I did that for every faction, that'd be a full-time job.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I would do is I'm like, all right, I need a storytelling beat where someone now controls this outpost.
And to just interject real quick, he mentioned specifically like a high-level defector is what a faction turn would be.
Okay.
So just kind of weave that in.
So perfect. Well, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Let's use that example. So instead of what I just said, say, okay, I want somebody to be a turncoat. I would then decide which turncoat would make the most conflict for one of my players. So I'm like, all right, you got Rudy Randolph here. And maybe that would work. Okay, you got Diggs. Okay, I'll probably go Diggs because he is the person who has the most ties to a faction.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right. Or it could be Ephraim. Or so I would look to see which player made the most sense. In other words, personally, I don't do a lot of the world is breathing and changing until I plan that session. I don't make a bunch of moves on the board.
Yeah, like you said, I wouldn't even call it cheating. The idea is just like a movie. The whole movie's written around the main character. Stuff doesn't happen in a movie that's not, that like doesn't have to do with the main character. So in order to make your factions feel alive, like you said, just specifically worry about what the faction does in reference to your players.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily matter as much if they overthrew this other guy in this other place and now they own that too. You know, they cut him out of whatever their trade of illegal goods, unless that affects the players. That could happen, and you can have that in your back of your mind. That's great. But like you said, you called it cheating, but I'm like, no, just consider, what does this mean? Yeah,
think of everything you put in a campaign is putting pieces on the board, and then every time you prep for the campaign, you just move those pieces around. So I won't spoil anything in our last session, but there were a few pieces that I was like, what's the sequel to this? Okay, I'm going to move this here. I'm going to move this person here. I'm going to move this person here. So rather than come up with new people, I was like, I want this person to come back. So I didn't think like, oh, okay, what's that person doing? What's their faction doing? I'm like, no, I need somebody from that faction to be here right now. So that's what's going to happen. Or I want somebody to resurface from the past. I got this. You know who? So-and-so's old Rogues Guild faction or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. So that would be my thought. If it's fun for you as a DM, you can come up with stuff that happens in the background. But the players aren't going to see a lot of that. And so it might be a lot of wasted work.
Yeah. Zero Cage, again, for the faction changes. Here's an example of a faction change. Paul McCartney leaves the Beatles to front Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
I thought that was a funny...
So that's actually a really good example, but as cool as that is in the world, if I don't have any players that are touching that fact...
Well, and that's the important thing. We just asked, what is a faction change?
Sure. Gotcha.
An example. So that isn't necessarily in you know, against what...
So to use that exact one, I would say, who was a roadie for Paul McCartney? Meaning, if I had one of my players who was like, yeah, they're a roadie for Paul McCartney, I'd be like, all right, cool. I need somebody who's going to be a high-level defector. The guy you used to be a roadie for, who you love and respect, is now leaving. Immediate conflict.
Exactly.
That's how I would handle
it. Patrick asked, are there any new ecological areas for Rangers to specialize in Dead Man's Guide to Dragonrin? I don't think so. I don't think, like, mechanically, that's a mechanic, and I don't think we're really adding anything like that, right?
The one that we've talked about, it's not a guarantee yet, is making a favored terrain bleak.
Oh, yeah, okay. I feel like that's more like a breakout box, because we don't have, like, a bunch of new ecological areas, but that's a good example.
That would be one where it's, like, probably a breakout box that would say, like, bleak, the desolation, places that are very different, like, because the desolation wouldn't be, like, woods. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's
It would
like,
be like
it's like
everything in the
shadow
desolation.
fell.
Yeah.
Right. So we're thinking about that. So yeah, probably Bleak and the Desolation would be the two. But like James said, it'll probably be very like Breakout Box-ish, where it's instead of choosing Underdark, consider choosing the Desolation, something like that.
Exactly. Dr. Professor Sir says,
Hey, what's up, man?
Says, which stretch goal are you most excited for?
What about you?
It's a really good question.
Let's pull them up.
Let's pull them up. That's a good idea, because I'm like, nobody would expect that we would just know all the stretch goals off the tops of our heads.
Right? It's like,
that'd be ridiculous. So it's hard not to go with some of the behemoths, but I think I'm going to pick one from the older ones, because I think that makes a little more sense, to be a little more granular. So keep scrolling. I just want to kind of get an idea of all of them. Keep going. I think maps for each region.
that was going to be mine.
No question. Because
gonna be mine.
as cool as mechanics are, we come up with them, so they're not as cool always. But to say, hey, draw a map for every region, it's way cooler to see that come alive,
Right. And I think because John Pintar is going to be handling that, one of the things I'm most excited about is these maps are going to be specific tonally to the region. So it's not like, hey, all of the maps look the same. They're just different places. It's like, no, in Talus, it's going to be like an elven cartographer made it. In Uldane, it's going to look like a Catchpenny explorer with his dying breath made it. So that the themes and the tones are like different for every map.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that too. I think aside from that, okay, this is going to be sort of the opposite of what you just said, but
well, yeah, it's fair to go with
only because we added so much with the lore infusion. We added so much with that, and there were so many other stretch goals that put like bonus regions and like mechanical systems that were like narrative. I think I'm most excited about the mechanics pack, because we decided early on that all the mechanics in this book were going to serve the inspirational tone of the book. It's not necessarily a player's guide. And what this did was this mechanics pack made me excited to add those things in. The mechanics that are like player-based, like the subclasses, backgrounds, spells, and feats, it's like frosting on a really good cake.
Yeah.
That was a really good question. Can we let's do a giveaway here.
Oh boy.
Was it Decepticam?
No. It was Dr. Professor Sir.
Dr. Professor Sir. So email absolutetabletop@gmail.com with the subject line winner.
We are assuming he's still here. But if you are still here, and if you are a sir, as your name implies, then do that.
Oh, Heavenly Hit Points. Bye.
Yeah, Heavenly Hit Points was leaving. Okay, so this next question is not directly related to Dragon Grin, but I wanted to answer it as honestly as I could.
Sure.
Stereotypical Marquise. If I wrote a 200-page Dragon Grin adventure path, what's the likelihood in you guys being open to reviewing it for publishing? I would not want to review it or publish it at all. But if you write a 20-page adventure in Subari or any other world that you come up with, I will not only review it, but I will make sure that I do everything in my power to help you get a physical book in your hands. Don't write for Dragon Grin. Write for all the amazing worlds you write stuff for. Pick one and do something awesome with it so that me and a bunch of other people can give you money for it. That's it. Also, big books are really expensive. So
they really are. Listen, so understand this. A 200-page book.
He says, wait, let's meet in the middle. 400 pages or even 800 pages.
Okay, now we're talking. Because now that was one of the stretch goals we unlocked on April Fool's Day, was a 900-page book of stuff we didn't want to.
In all seriousness, like really, the bigger the book gets, the more unwieldy and difficult. We've had a few people say, why don't you ship to this country? And we're like, because it's $90 to ship it to Israel. I'm really sorry. If you want to pay $90, we'll let you. But
totally. It's more than the book to ship.
It is. It's crazy.
So I agree with James, which is I want to buy a Point of Inspiration book.
Exactly.
Or even if you're doing your own thing. Like, I don't know if, like, being very real, I don't know if a Point of Inspiration is still around, if you guys are doing anything actively as a group, but don't let that stop you. Either way, I would love to see, like James is saying, one finished, like, this thing is tight, top-notch Subari PDF. We started with Tieflings of Dragon Grin, and that is a book I'm proud of, but would never have kickstarted.
Exactly.
But it's progress over perfection. So that would be my thought, man. And I honestly, I would not only read it, I would review it, and I'll stop writing the checks there, but just know that we would do all that we could in our power to help you be successful.
And like I said, I'm happy to personally write that check. As most or all people that are actually serious about publishing, if they come to me with, hey, I wrote all this cool stuff, how do I make it into a book? I'll help you make it into a book. I won't help you make it into a book until you have a book to make into a book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But as soon as someone's like, hey, I have 30 pages, really cool thing, it's just a Word doc, I don't know what's next. I'm like, listen, I will help you figure out what's next.
That's true.
Sigmar said, first time I am happy that shipping is only $18 for me. Sigmar, I don't know where you live, but you missed out on our first Kickstarter where we gave shipping away for free.
Oath of the Frozen Mistake.
Well, not really, to some degree. Honestly, we were giving shipping away for free to some people. The mistake is that we accidentally, it was a whole thing, but still, no, I guess you're right. Either way, we gave it away. We gave shipping away for free on that book, but it was also under 2 pounds, whereas this book is set to be over 3 pounds. So we couldn't do that this time because there wouldn't be a Kickstarter.
Right.
Jason just got here as well, but we have some more questions. Hello, Jason, is what I meant. Hey! Sorry, I didn't mean to gloss over that. I was like, the questions.
And Jason's here.
And Jason's here, this guy. Time to close it all down. No, but seriously, hey, Jason. He just found us 5 days ago, and he's from Poland. Well, I'm glad we're shipping to Poland because, like I said, the book's heavy, and in some cases, we weren't actually able to ship it to places.
Like 3 times I was going to make a joke that we hit some astronomical number, and all 3 times I keep thinking, that's not a funny joke.
That's not a funny joke. Guys, we didn't double our Kickstarter in 4 hours, if you were wondering. And Leiden, I think, and Leiden seems to work for me. Will there be an AbTab store at the AtCom where the physical books can be bought? We are talking about something like that. We didn't do it the first time around, but we realized that a bunch of people asked us that, and we didn't even have that many at the time. So we will potentially be doing something like that because it kind of makes sense, and people wanted it. I mean, it's really where it's at. You know, we have a bunch of physical books, and shipping will be a lot cheaper. You shipped your whole body all the way to AtCom,
right? Just
back,
throw it in the suitcase. That's kind of what people were saying was, hey, I want to buy some of your stuff. It's easier if I can just put it in my suitcase and bring it home. Some people also had the cockamamie idea that we would sign their books. We will. But
we didn't know that would be.
I have syndrome, imposter. And so I'm like, you want my signature? You're like, what are you talking about?
I don't want to ruin your. They're like, oh, yeah, Chris Perkins, will you sign it next to him? I'm like, I'm not going to ruin this book for you. What?
That actually happened.
That's what I'm saying. That was a real example.
Someone actually had James and I sign next to Chris Perkins' name in there. Was it a Dungeon Master guide? I think it was the Dungeon Master.
Yeah, we had a lot of DM. Yeah, they probably would have had us sign our books if we
had them. That's.
Right. Mark Wright asks, so you know the dice went to Dragongrin. How often do others from different planets or realms travel there or vice versa? So, Burp McGee over here. This is something that can happen, but is extremely rare.
Sure.
If ever. Certainly you wouldn't. It's not a reliable way to travel, and it's unlikely, because you basically, in order to go from one of these worlds to another, you'd have to go through the bleak. Another thing is, in maybe my headcanon, I don't know if this is like official, not all of these worlds are necessarily taking place at the same time. So, for example, if you left Enkea and did actually make it to Dragongrin, it wouldn't necessarily be now here if it's now there. It might be a wasteland because the apocalypse happened in Dragongrin. It might be long before anybody got there. It might be all frontiers, or vice versa if you went from one to the other. So, but as much as you want in your world, basically,
we essentially made it as difficult as crossing the Atlantic in a rowboat.
Yeah.
And the reason why we did that is because we didn't want, in our own personal games, where this world of Arbitron was birthed from, we didn't want it to get too hinky and cheesy with, Christmas special appearances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then
for us,
what's up? Yeah. So for our own personal tastes, we limited it. And I think that's actually really cool about the time streams. I know we talked about that specifically for Crore.
Oh, yeah,
That Crore probably happened a long time ago in our head, at least in my head canon. I don't know what Matt thinks. Can I just point that out? I love writing RPGs because this is what they're made for. James's Dragongrin, his Crore, his Enkea is going to be different than mine. Like in nuanced areas, and my Crore is going to be different than Matt's.
Exactly.
But that doesn't stop me, and it doesn't make Matt any less likely to play in my game. So just that was kind of a side point because I think it's really interesting. What other medium is that aside from like maybe comics?
In fact, Chad said, I love that about limiting time streams and crossovers like big comic book moments. That's the important thing, is for big moments, for that cool thing where Dice's character effectively gets retired and does that, really cool. But it wouldn't be cool if it happened every game and somebody's just, I'm going to just hop over to Dragon Run real quick.
Exactly.
Also, if you could, everybody would just leave Dragon Run. If that
like, is one of the other main things. And so there's this arcane maelstrom you might be familiar with called the Bleak, which is that that wraps all of the different realms and makes it difficult to traverse.
Don says, what's your favorite plot hook? Legendary Relic, Grand Wars of the Rebel Leader, who is bringing about change in a negative way for the world, or the good old damsel in distress? Do you have a go-to? I don't really have a go-to. What happens for me is I get inspired about something. I almost always hear a song and come up with a cool idea, or an idea that I think is cool. But sometimes I'll read something or see a show and I think I want to run a game that's like that episode of that show. And then I'll figure out what that means. So I don't usually have like a go-to, like, oh, you know, like you said, a Grand Wars of the Rebel Leader who are bringing about change. That might end up in the world. But for me, plot hooks, because they're so small in games, or I say small, but, you know, like I'm usually running one shot. So it's so sort of encapsulated that it isn't usually a big event. It's like, oh, I just want them to be lost in space. What'll that mean? You know, because I'm watching Lost in Space.
Sure, kind of right. For me, I don't think of it in terms of plot hooks.
Yeah.
Here's why. You say, what plot hook? I say, let's say I go, Relic. Most dungeon masters would then follow a very formulaic, probably similar pattern to deliver this plot hook.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, okay, and then you're in the town, and which is totally fine. I am not knocking that. I'm just saying that doesn't excite me. So what excites me is I like hooks. So I like novel hooks or big openers. That's usually what you'll find in my sessions. I like to do a big opener. So rather than a plot hook, because honestly, a lot of that stuff's interchangeable. I mean, I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but a lot of that stuff, it's like, you know, okay, am I going to rescue my brother, or am I going to rescue a sword, or am I going to find... That's not the cool part for me, because that's the stuff you can hot swap and it won't matter as much.
Yeah.
What matters more is starting off, like I've got this idea for a session where a hero goes crazy. And that's the beginning, and this is going to get really dark, but that's basically the beginning. Is he's standing there in the town square, and it's like, I describe it to where it's just close on this mage, and you see it, and as it zooms out a little bit, he's got a magic wand to his own temple, and he basically just says, this wand is the wand of wills. You know, they say that you know, the bearer can't harm themselves. They're like, and he's like, but if you try really hard and if you're strong enough, and then he blows his own brains out with the wand. And as it zooms out, it's just this whole village laid to waste, and he was the good guy. And the adventurers kind of come up. That to me is I love smash openings, huge openings. There's no plot hook there, but I'd figure something out. I'd rather see an experience and have this really cool novel opening and have the players kind of fit like,
what is it? You know, half of the session is what happened.
What happened? And
nobody's
the descriptions and all this. Yeah. And then I would figure out, and I'd have some other sparse notes, but I would then figure out by their responses and their reactions what they're into, and then I kind of direct it that way. Like
Don says, nice, I dig it.
So I know that is such a long answer, but
again, I think that really people are looking for sort of insights, because the next question is sort of a similar question, a similar vein. They're looking for insights into how we do it. So even if you say we do it different than you thought, I think that's okay. Decepticam says, if you're creating a campaign, what is the general process you follow versus world building? Do you come up with a beginning and an end and simply wing it throughout? Do you have bullet points that you want to have happen, or do you throw them in a world, give them a hook, and roll with it?
Don, I want to send you a free copy of Be a Better Campaign Master, Book 1, Building the World. Email absolutetabletop@gmail.com. Fantastic question. With the subject line winner.
With the subject line winner. So,
or we'll miss it.
Decepticam, for me, Oh yeah, Redfield said, "Seat of your pants DMing." Wow, that's Tim for you.
It really is. You'd probably get anxiety if you saw how few notes I had, and I just kind of like, no, seriously, I'm just steering it in, and the engines are down, and I'm just like,
okay, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna land.
It either crashes bad or it lands, and it's
lands, and everybody's happy. They never knew there was trouble. Overlord of Eki says the Dismembered Lord starts to look like for Dragon Room what the God Emperor is for 40k, except he's an antagonist instead of a hero. I'm just now reading the Horus Heresy. I'm on book 2, so I only kind of know what that means because I think he comes back later. The Emperor left Horus in charge, so it seems like it, like everybody kind of. But that's an interesting point that we talked about. The idea is everybody. Well, no, it's more like the Dismembered Lord. The idea is at least in 30k, not 40k, because of when this is taking place. As far as I know, they don't sort of worship the Emperor. In fact, they're not allowed to. That's bad because they're so secular that anything spiritual is like corruption, all this. So I find that really interesting because that is how I view the Dismembered Lord, as more of a ruler. But I think that some people view him as like a god to be, you know, like just greatly worshipped, which I thought was kind of another interesting thing that colors the world one way or another way.
It does. Now, we did skip Decepticam's question.
No, I know. Yeah, I was just sorry. I was saying that.
I was just making sure. No, I was making sure we went back.
But yes, okay. So for me, if I'm running a campaign, I ran a campaign once. We decided it was 6 sessions. I didn't know what I was going to do for the first session. I had a rough idea of what I wanted them to do, but then I just made decisions about the characters. That may not always work, but for example, one of my favorite ones that I wished had come more to fruition was one of the characters that Mike the Piper was playing. The players found a wanted poster with his face on it, and they didn't know why. And we kind of, on the spot, he came up with why that was, and that it was a secret, and it was all this stuff. And then each session I prepped, the whole arc was kind of taking a little bit more shape, and I'd add a little parts, but I would just make bullet points of, they go here, they have this encounter, these are the mechanics for it, this, and then the rest was just role playing. Like you said, very sparse. The 6-session campaign, I probably have 3 pages of notes for. Bullet pointed notes.
For a campaign, I believe it is impossible to bullet point because you don't know what the players are going to like,
not
and
the whole
what
thing.
direction. Yeah. So the way that I have learned to do it, and I think it works really well, is you have to think of everything that you're doing as placing pieces on the board, and those pieces are just challenges or people, and basically you put a bunch of obstacles and fun stuff. It's like a playground.
Obstacles, I think, is an even better way for that I like to look at it.
Sure.
To say, hey, you guys want to get there? Nope. What are you gonna do?
Now, we've talked about this thing called a session 0 before, which is basically just everybody sits down for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, and just says, hey, you know what I'd love? I'd love to play a game like this. That's how you decide what pieces you want to put on the board.
Yeah.
We've used the food analogy. You decide what kind of pizza you're going to make because you know what everybody likes as far as ingredients or doesn't like. From there, once you place those pieces, a campaign is movement in between sessions. It's the work you do linking things together to make it have an overall story arc. So let the players do whatever in the session. Don't think, oh, this isn't lining up with the campaign. Let them have fun and wander around.
That's the campaign.
That's the campaign. But then you're like, all right, so they ended up over here. What am I going to do? Ooh, I know. I'm going to take this piece because he would be looking for that scepter. So next session, they're going to run into Bart. All right. And then, this area is where James's character is wanted. So I'm going to take this
Somebody recognizes him.
Somebody recognizes him. I still don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to let that play out.
But that's the important thing is you couldn't even begin to plan what would happen.
Listen. Rule -1. Because they talk about all these other rule zeros. The DM's always right. Rule -1 is players will never do what you expect.
Yeah.
Period.
Jake said he's planning an 8-part mini campaign for Harbinger and can only bullet point plan the first 2 sessions because of player agency.
Exactly. And that's about as far as you'd want to go, Jake. That's very smart DMing.
In the Lost Mine of Phandelver thing in the adventure in the starter kit, the DM starter or D&D starter kit, the 5e one, there's a piece that happens. Basically, there are these red brands, this faction that's in the town, and they're basically like, hey, at this point in the game, if they haven't met them yet, run them into them. Just like see what happens. You know, throw them in a blender together. And that's like, I think, a really clever way to do it. And maybe most people are used to it being a little more linear. Okay, this is from way back. Darius. I say Darius because that's how he says it in the Key and Peele sketch. It's probably Darius. Darius says, hey guys, love the sound of differing map themes. Will they be absolutely accurate? This was talking way back to the region maps. I can say with certainty that no, they will not be absolutely accurate. Because they will be made by different cartographers. Some of them will be a map of like, this is what we think it is. And but the important thing is they'll also have some empty space so that so that you never have a game where you go, and then you guys go 6 dregs north. And they're like, oh, but 6 dregs north is where this city is. And you're like, well, not in my Dragon Grain. And then you're just like, no, I mean, you just plop a city there. That's yours now.
That's it. I've heard this phrase, which I think sums it up perfectly. The map is not the territory. So it is a map. It is not the actual land. Meaning, I believe that it's important to leave some fudge room and inaccuracy, especially if it's a fantasy world, because most of the time they don't have the exact technology to do those sorts of things. But magic, sure. I think the map is not the territory.
I got a new factoid trigger that may or may not ever come up.
Sure.
But there is a thing. I forgot the exact name of it, but the idea is that it's like the coastal paradox or whatever. It's the idea is that the more you try to measure a coastline, the longer it gets into infinity. Because the idea is the more and more you zoom in, the more sort of differentiations it has. So for usually what you're doing, it's enough to say, well, it's roughly shaped like this. If you go there, it'll be this. But if you try to measure it to the inch, to the centimeter, literally in current modern times, we are unable to measure exact coastlines. For that reason, they change all the time. Tides rise, tides lower, things corrode, or erode rather. It's literally impossible.
Right.
So like you said, in a place like that, you're like, no, they put them in the wrong spot on the map. You know, that happens sometimes.
Right. So we'll say this. There will not be any false information.
That's a good way.
So putting it to the other side, we're never going to trick you or put wrong information on there, but they will be built to be flexible.
So Grayson asked, so one of the pillars that I want my world to focus on is a cold world vibe / racial tension between the Hellions, not like Hellions with 2 L's, but maybe it's Helians, Helians. Human nation, think Romans and feudal Japan combined. And the faunus, the animal race, the tabaxi, turtle, kenku. The issue I have is I don't know how to achieve this. Any pointers?
Food.
Well, I was going to say
Water.
anything. In fact, not to try to sell you a book, but in the Be a Better Faction Master book on our website, there is a thing. There's a worksheet in there to allow you to say, okay, these are the factions. Why do they fight? Basically, just like players, you figure out what they both need: food, water. If one of them, they have, for a modern example, oil reserves. Like, hey, we need that. Or in general, any resource is a good one.
That's why modern nations typically go to war.
Exactly.
Beliefs and resources.
I was going to say, and then beliefs were like, oh, this is our holy land. This is your, so I think the important thing is on a high level, factions fight for, like you said, beliefs or needs, whether or not those beliefs are founded or that those needs are real. They might think they need all the food because that's how their minds work, even if they have plenty. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It doesn't have to be real or rational.
Right.
But they just need to have a reason to be at odds. Otherwise, they'd be friends.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to have something that is perpetually the fact. Meaning, it's okay to have something where it's like, no, the premise of the world is it starts here.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. 100-year truce between the Hellions and the... What was the difference? Faunus.
Again, pronunciation out the window.
The 100-year truce is coming to an end. The re-signing ceremony has been postponed 3 times. And that's the campaign world. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
It's okay for that to be the thrust.
For your players to live in that world of like, what's going to happen? We don't know yet. They're eventually going to get to this Cold War esque thing.
So the idea, I think, that would create this sense immediately is, on paper, the treaty has expired. So it's just the law of good nature and good nature.
And consider the world, past events in our world where stuff like that's happened. World War I. You know what I mean? Duke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. There were a lot of different treaties. They were actually more official than on paper. But the idea being, maybe there's one event, maybe your players kick off this actual like aggression where there's something and then it stops. Very broad strokes. The Cold War was due to people, the multiple nations, specifically the U.S. and the Soviets, wanting, kind of sizing each other up, but not wanting to start the war for various reasons. You know, because they knew it was at that time nuclear war. That's why it was Cold War. Again, very broad strokes. No, this is not a history lesson. Try to come up with the reason that they can't openly go to war. In fantasy, I imagine they would usually openly go to war. If you want it to be Cold War, try to come up with the reason that they can't actually fight each other, even after your version of the Bay of Pigs, even after all of these terrible things.
One side controls the food source, one side controls the water source.
So they have to trade.
Right.
And if they fight, they're gonna stop on both sides. Right. Something like that.
And so, yeah, I think that would be a great starting point.
And then Grayson said, I love that example. It's perfect. I'm probably talking about the example you gave. I don't remember what it was. But
the treaty. The treaty.
That's it. Yeah.
All of that. Throw that all in there. And again, it's important. So I'm going to give you a piece of advice. And I've learned this from playing under some great dungeon masters. I'll put it to you this way. I've heard recently that the tension is not finding the clue. It's after you found the clue, figuring out what it means.
Exactly.
So I have found that when I just openly give players information, it's way better.
Oh, yeah.
So what I mean specifically is, I would not make all of this a mystery. I would actually make a very short, hear me, short thing that I would read off to the players. And I would just basically say, for 100 years, blah, 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 blah. The treaty has been over for a month now, or 6 months, whatever. And one side controls the food, one side controls the water. It is a tense situation, almost like a Cold War. I would just say that.
Because then you don't have to make it. The players just know.
And then all the choices you make at the table make it feel like a Cold War. But then they're also going to go into it and be like, ooh, so is it like this? And then you can go, yeah.
Even if you never even considered that, they'd think, oh, well, maybe they don't serve the kind of food that I like here because it's not. And you're like, that's perfect. Your players just built your world for you.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
Tamiko said, hypothetically, if someone were to decide to write some supplemental materials and do a small PDF on DM's Guild or Drive-Thru, what elements do you think are essential to include, e.g. art, maps? The only thing that's absolutely essential to include is the content. You don't need art. Art does often sell books. Art is a lot of times what brings people in. It's a lot of times what immerses them. You don't need it. But I have really cool news. If you didn't know this, you might know this, but you may not know this. If you do it on the DM's Guild, they have, because you can only, if you publish something on the DM's Guild, it has to stay there. You can't sell it anywhere else. But what that allows you to do is allows you to use their assets. They have both free assets, plenty of art and maps, as well as things for pay. The important thing is this art is like extremely cheap. If we commission a piece of art, it could be anywhere, depending on how undetailed it is, to $50 to $500.
Right.
And sometimes more.
Oh, yeah.
We've certainly been quoted more. We rarely pay that much. But still, we're talking like 6 different types of humans, say, for like a couple dollars on the DM's Guild. Maybe $5 for like 5 different humans.
And there are some pieces that if you're making a Wizards of the Coast compatible book, you can use for free.
Exactly. There is a bunch of free stuff, to be clear, but even better, like you can just go through there. So I think that art is pretty important. It's not the most important, but pretty important.
Sure.
And maps, but if you do it on the DM's Guild, all of that is extremely attainable for, I mean, you can make a book for under $50, under $100, and potentially make that right back, because then you can turn around and sell it.
I think the only thing that I would say is absolutely essential, like I'm like, yes, do this. Make sure you do this. Have an outside editor, preferably someone with actual editing experience, look over your work. This is so important because there is little that will make me think less of your work quickly than very basic typos. I don't trust you and I make typos all the time, but the difference is I make sure we fix them.
Yeah.
It's that you have put a piece of work out with that detail that's fixable. Now I don't trust that the rest of the book is going to be worth my time. So that's the only thing I would say is essential is
it brings it down.
Have someone proofread it, preferably, even if you go to fiverr.com and pay, you know, 15, 20 bucks, have someone look through it professionally and take their recommendations.
Yeah. Even at the very least, if you have anyone look over it, again, if you're just trying it out, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there are typos to this day in Tiefling of Dragongrin. We didn't have a professional look over it. We looked over it, but there's only so much you can do. So, but that's the important thing. Have anyone but you look over it at least just to say, hey, you know, you spelled this word wrong, or, oh, this sentence is in passive voice. It should be an active voice. Those are things that we struggle with all the time. They don't end up in our books because we edit them over and over again. And like you said, had people, Matt's a professional editor, he looks over it.
Exactly. So that's a very, very good question. Who was that?
That was Tomiko. Tomiko of Yucktown.
Tomiko, if we haven't given you one yet, we'd like to. That was a really good question. Email absolutetabletop@gmail.com with the subject line winner, and we'll give you a free copy of Be a Better Campaign Master Book 1. That was a great question.
And TrueMate says, gotta love proofreaders. It is the first line, or if the first line of a book I read has a spelling mistake, it affects how I view the rest of the book. That's exactly. Oh, Tomiko has all of your PDFs.
I figured. You know
I had a really good feeling.
I had a feeling too, but if you still want the code and you want to give it to somebody else, you're more than welcome to it.
Oh, but yeah, that's the idea. Is it colors the rest of the book. It's like, I mean, there are plenty of examples, but it's all about how we make judgments.
If you walk through the door of a restaurant and it's dirty,
there you go. A great example.
You're like, nah, nah. I will close your PDF if there's basic grammatical errors in the first page. And I don't mean like, oh, they didn't use the Oxford comma. I mean, it's like, that's not how you spell rogue.
Yeah, like you're like,
I'm out. That was easy. That one was, you know, we could have fixed that one. We could have caught it. So anyway, that would be my only thing.
Ben Buckner asks, have you come up with any more cool ideas / recipes for the Cookbook of the Realms Volume 2?
Okay. I have a sideways answer to this, but do you have any answers?
Basically, what I was going to say was, I don't know what you're going to say. I think that we absolutely have plans in the future to do another cookbook. It's not by a country mile, even one of our most popular books, even a little bit, but it's one of my favorite.
Which I think is because of when it came out. Yes, I think because of how it fell.
But the important thing being, it's something that we loved, that was a lot of fun, and I think would be a little, not only better done, but, you know, be cool to kind of do nowadays. So I wouldn't say I have any specific ideas. I have gotten into cooking a lot more, so I might actually, you know, put a recipe or two in there and, you know, kind of skin it to a world. That'd be really cool. It'd be amazing. Now, I already can say that my names are on published books. It'd be so cool to say, for me, this is really weird, for me to say that I published a recipe. That would be amazing.
It'd be cool.
Crazy.
It'd be really cool.
I don't know why that's different than, oh, I just had a Kickstarter reach 55K and I also have my
because we have little things that we want. It's just interesting things to ask.
So yeah, sideways answer, but
well, backward real quick. The reason why is because we have slowly built up to this, but you've never had a recipe published, so it's wholly new.
Exactly.
It's like,
I'm like, yeah, we had a book.
Whereas this, we're like, no, we're thankful, we're grateful, we're blown away.
Step.
Right. This is like, oh, we're making progress. That's like, I got a recipe published. So this is the sideways thing, is that I've really been tinkering around. We've got this group on Facebook called Minotaur Fitness for Geeks, and it's sort of blown up. It's basically just people who want to be more healthier. We're not doctors. We're not nutritional physicians, none of that, but we're just hanging out, talking about fitness. I would love to put together a geeky guide to some staple recipes that are just relatively balanced, and not just for RPGs, but like theme it like with a workout routine and stuff like that. Like, listen, I don't know if I would get sued for this, but how cool would a workout routine and meal plan be that's called Stronger Things?
I think you could do that.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be really
I just
cool.
feel like, and do it.
Amazing.
It's a week at a time, because listen, 30-day plan, people fall off the wagon. But if I'm like, oh, okay, what's my one for this week?
Yeah, all right, it's Monday again.
Boom.
What do I do?
Simple grocery list, super easy, like tasty recipes that aren't crazy. They're not whatever. And then like a simple body weight workout. And you do that. You do like Earth's Mightiest, and it's like Avengers themed stuff.
Yeah.
You don't say the exact names because you don't want to get sued. But the reason why I say that is because if I was going to do a cookbook, that would be the next one I would do, is Minotaur Fitness for Geek books that people could do. Maybe even do like the A5 pocket size.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So anyway.
So Micah asks, 5e is obviously a very popular system.
Yeah.
And A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin is mostly written agnostic but compatible from what I understand.
Yep.
But is there any other system you'd love to see someone run it in for the sheer difference some of its mechanics might offer or other details? If I was put on the spot to answer that, I don't have as much experience with RPGs to really answer this question that great.
Sure.
But I'd love to see it in the tone of something like Lamentations, because it's so, like, to me, it's so small in scale, at least in my understanding, because of all the tables and how dangerous it is. In 5e, I'm like, I get on a boat and I go to this place.
Yeah.
In Lamentations, like, that's a lot more dangerous prospect because there's always something around the corner that can kill you. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know enough about Lamentations to really speak to that, but something like that, an OSR style Dragon Grin game would be very, very cool.
That's cool. And one of these days, we've got so many really cool things already in the works. But one of these days, whether it means we go full time or
you see it in 4 years.
Yeah.
One of those.
I would love to do our own OSR style rule set, very similar to, a Lamentations or any of the other, because they all follow the same OGL, Open Gaming License, called Frontiers of Old Dragon Grin, which before the Dismembered Lord, it's basically the people settling Dragon Grin. And I'd love to see, like, what does it look like before the Bleak was super rampant? It's very OSR, but it's like untamed wild.
It's a lot of exploring. It's sort of, discovering new monsters you never heard of. I know
all that stuff.
Right. I think OSR games are real big on that. Like, they don't give you monsters. They say, no, come up with a monster and make it really dangerous.
And use pieces from existing monsters in Dragon Grin so that it's kind of like, oh, this must be the progenitor to this. So
it'd be really cool to kind of be the people settling the lands. I think it's a little bit like, not Burning Wheel. What's the other one? Dungeon Crawl.
Dungeon Crawl Classics.
No, that one that Torchbearer.
Torchbearer. Yeah,
Torchbearer, where it's like I love that kind of system where it's very resource heavy. And it's all about going out and seeing what you can do. And it's very dangerous out there. Those themes.
That's a good answer to do Lamentations. I think for me, I want to see what a Fate game would look like. Because, and I mentioned this in a live stream the other day, but the high concepts would be really cool and kind of gritty. It's like, down on his luck farmer whose crops were burned. Like, it's tough. And then also the stunts and the aspects and all those different things. I would like to see how people translated the dark and gritty world into those stories. And so I think I would probably say Fate. Second answer would be any totally different system, like Fantasy Flight Games, Star Wars, or like Genesis. Something totally interesting to just see how people would disseminate the...
Well, yeah, and even like we talked about, touched on briefly earlier, kind of a little bit sideways, for me, not to use it to run something in Dragon Grin, but to use a part of the book as a template for what I want to do. Like I said, so, okay, I'm coming up with this world. I grab the region template, I clear it out, and I fill it in for a place in my world and run that. You know what I mean? Kind of like a meta using the system to just say, oh, no, this is a really cool idea. Transplant that idea to a completely different like, oh, it's not Dragon Grin. It's a modern game. It's in space. It's something like that. Like,
I love it.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
Hey, Ben Fisher's here. What's up, Ben? You might have been here for a long time. I just saw your name.
No, he earlier he said, he didn't say anything in the chat, so he might have been here. He said he needed your shirt. He's very excited about your shirt.
Oh, yeah. That's great, isn't it?
And he said he's always hit 55K, which telling people it was.
A lot of people don't know this. Do you know what his first name is?
Mario.
Hamato. This is Hamato Yoshi.
Isn't that? What's that from?
It's from Ninja Turtles.
Oh, that's
Hamato Yoshi is Splinter before he got turned into Splinter, and Orokusaki is Shredder. That's extremely present on my mind because, listen, last night I'm watching the Jarl DM's YouTube channel, and Nicholas Dawson's running a game on there. Nicholas, you're never going to see this in 100 years, but you need your own YouTube channel because I'd watch it. Anyway, so they're playing this extremely thematic, heavy role play, feudal Japan. Like, they're going through and they're talking about houses and honor and all this. And I'm like, dude, I'm super wrapped in. And then Lloyd goes, yes, and then we will defeat Orokusaki. And I was like,
wait, what? It took you right out of it.
Because I'm like, wait. So I'm in the chat and I go, did you just say Orokusaki? Like, because I didn't know if it was like he thought that was a name he came up with.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and so I was like, yeah, I'm not trying to blow up your spot. I'm like, did you just say Orokusaki? And he goes, in the chat, he's like, you're darn right. And, I was like, and then later they were like, we are House Hamato. I'm like, they're doing this like alternate reality, hyper realistic role play of the Ninja Turtles origins, like of Shredder and Splinter.
Oh,
so
that's amazing.
it was really clever.
So we will be finishing up soon, and we didn't have any questions, but we got a couple. So we're gonna
Awesome.
not go through them quick, but
Marquise, are you still here?
We'll
if
see
you're
if
still here, I'm going to give you a free book because I want you to write a book, and I want you to get a book as a token in exchange for the book you're going to write.
If he's not here, maybe Tamika will give him one.
Try to do it.
So,
do it now.
Don asked.
Do it now.
Don asked, will the Kickstarter include custom classes? I know about the custom races and backgrounds, but are there classes that exist in Dragon Grin that will be released in the book?
I have a pretty hard stance on this.
So go ahead.
Do you want to answer?
As far as I know, the answer is no.
No. Do you know why?
I was afraid that the answer was
no.
different.
The answer is not different.
But tell me why, because I think I have a similar stance, I think.
Hopefully this will be I'll read that in a minute. Hopefully this will be the tale that you tell people when you prove me wrong. Hopefully this is going to be my college professor said I wouldn't make it, and that's why I did. Classes are not really necessary because we've got enough.
Yeah.
Now, that is not my normal tact on any creative stuff. If you have a class in mind that you really want to go ahead and do, knock it out of the park. But Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford, who write Dungeons & Dragons full-time, have not released an official new class since the game came out 3 years ago, and there's a reason. They designed the system flavorfully so that you could create subclasses. Is there a new class? Probably. And there will be more.
Is there a new class that can be made?
Yes. Yeah. But, and I'm not kidding here, 8 out of 10 could easily be narratively changed an existing class. Because all a class is, I call these the quantum bones, which means strip away all of the fluff and lore. What a monk is a set of numbers that gets to spend a set of numbers. What a wizard is a set of numbers that gets to shoot out certain things from a list of numbers, etc., etc., etc. All of the mechanics in the system have been play tested over hundreds of thousands of games in the last 3 years. And that is something that is not to lightly foray into. I'm going to do a new one because I can tell you most of the classes that I see, I'm like, oh, that's a ranger.
Yeah.
You made a ranger that isn't as rangery, but you should reskin a ranger because it would also have, I think, a little better.
And like you said, though, reskin or in some cases, the what was it? Oh, making a subclass. Because again, so I do think of it that way a lot because that's how programming is. The idea that a lot of times architecture demands that you make something that is open enough that the things that inherit from it can be anything, but still set or follow a specific set of rules. So like you said, I think that subclasses, I'd want more subclasses before I'd want more classes.
Sure.
Or like more spells before I'd want more ways to cast spells. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities, you know, and I've heard a lot mechanically. What about the witch doctor? Cool. Or what about, you know, I think like Marquise is working on the warlord. It's a totally separate class.
And it does have some very cool concepts.
It can work. But I would say if it's the first time that you're looking to do something like this, which that wasn't necessarily your question, but don't start with a class. But that's the reason why we're staying away from. That's the reason why.
So remember that he asked us.
No. I'm talking to the room here. But that's the reason why we're not including classes, because for me, at most, and I'm not even promising this, you would just see reskinned classes that are the same quantum bones, just flavored differently.
Yeah.
Because So anyway, we could do a whole stream on that because I am not opposed to it, and I hope, again, prove me wrong. You know, I'm the college professor who's like, you're never going to make it.
And he said that's an interesting take on it. I do agree that they have tons of potential of crossover with existing classes. So Dante didn't ask a question, but I feel compelled to potentially help answer it. He said, I'm hyped for running a game in Dragon Grin, but I'm terrified that guy in my group is going to roll a very silly character concept and wreck the field. We've talked multiple times in this stream about session zeros, and it's important to kind of go to the players and say, hey, what does everybody want? What does everybody not want? To get on the same page. Now, in that session zero, he may say, I want to be, a rogue that wants to eat all the time and makes jokes about fat people. That doesn't really fit in Dragon Grin.
Maybe not in yours.
My answer to something like that, somebody wrecking the field, would be, well, this time around, I'm going to run Dragon Grin. And for this, when I run, we're going to, I'd like to kind of go with this kind of feel and we can find something that fits. But we can also play another game, alternatively, next time, whatever that is. And we'll do what you want to do. Basically, not everybody can have exactly what they want all the time.
Right.
But the give and take but we will do that at some point. But for this game, it's better to, to stay more serious because this game has a more serious tone. I think somebody else mentioned something else, but the idea is another thing that I have seen kind of work, but you have to be delicate depending on how this person is and how close you are with them and stuff. The idea that when they do something silly, you have the characters in the world react as though that really just happened in front of them. So you're in Dragon Grin, tone's really dark, you're in a place, the Marrow are here, and he says something stupid that he thinks is funny. He makes a joke because he's ruining the field. If you treat it like, no, that really just, like, did you just say that in character? And he's like, yeah, I tell the Marrow his hat's funny. He's likely to get beat up, like the crap beat out of him by the Marrow, if not killed, because that's Dragon Grin. Now, again.
And that character will probably be like, why'd you beat me up? You're a bad DM. And
he said something like, oh, he might think I'm picking on him later when somebody mentions it. I'm like, so that is an important concept, but the most important thing is everybody has to be on the same page for it to work.
Then that to me is so here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm not suggesting you ostracize your friends, and I'm not saying don't run Dragon Grin. What I'm saying is, probably more than I could express, I love my family. I mean it. They're my heart, my entire family. I would never expect for them to run a serious Dragon Grin game for them and for them to stay entirely serious the whole time. It won't happen. It's not going to happen. But I could probably run a game in Dragon Grin and let them. Essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play to the room. I'm going to play to my audience.
Yeah. They'll
pay attention and they'll have fun. And it might even get serious. But we're going to make jokes and be dumb because that's what they're going to do. There's not a long enough timeline where that wouldn't happen.
You can't force the tone on some people.
So
like our family being the best example.
So if you really want to do that, I would maybe recommend running a Dragon Grin game for some people online in the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group and throwing out some interest, or having that conversation you recommended. And if one of the players is like, but no, I want to play, Harpo the Feces Elf, you're like, okay, we'll do a different game. How about every other week we'll do
exactly compromise? I think is the name of the game.
Compromise. Half happy, half happy. That's from Stronger Things.
Bromos asked, what kind of open water encounters could we expect to see in Dragon Grin?
Hey, Mapronomicon, by the way.
Oh, hey, Mapper, I didn't see that.
He also, I have to say, he said, consequently, Quantum Bones was my nickname in college. Oh, I love it.
So I think that if I remember correctly, in part of there's a section of the book kind of devoted to the Bleak. It's, not 100 pages, but there's a part where we talk very in depth about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we talk about certain things that come out of the Bleak.
Sure.
The reason I mentioned that is most of the open water is sort of covered by the Bleak. And if it even parts that aren't, that sometimes clear up, it's often dangerous to sail too far because the Bleak can show up at any time and it has crazy effects. You'll learn about those effects in the Bleak portion. But I still think you could have, crazy water encounters or maybe pirates or something. But more often than not, to me, an open water encounter would be, oh, and then the Bleak showed up. Whatever is happening regular.
That's a good answer.
And then the Bleak showed up and this monster came and then this thing happened and your boat turned into not a boat. I don't know.
Your boat turned into a bunch of truncheons holding hands, little hand truncheons. So there's also there's going to be some cool stuff in the various regions. So any of the regions that are in and around water, one of the main ones being Aquianus, which is like basically just our excuse to have Cthulhu elves. And like I have a R'lyeh, like this sunken city. It's basically sunken copper sun. some of the encounters around there will also be water-based as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we're doing is we're making sure, not equally, but that the different terrain from the game is represented in various realms.
Yeah.
Or various regions, because don't expect, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3 forests, there's 1, 2, 3 deserts. It's like,
yeah,
no,
it's not going to be even everywhere, but there's going to be a lot of it.
Right. We're going to make sure that all of the actual terrain that your ranger can choose as favorite terrain will be somewhere, and including water. Make sure that there's water stuff, forest stuff, desert stuff.
I think this got out in a stretch goal, but we had an area that was like archipelago islands. So this is where there wouldn't be as many. There'd be a lot more open water stuff, even going from one place to another and kind of around it. There'd be a lot of fishing, stuff like that. Mittada. See you later, Jake.
Bye, Jake. Mwah. Kisses for your beard.
So we have a few more questions. I think we're gonna stop taking questions because we keep getting them. They slowed down for a little while.
All right. So put like a marker in the chat. Question stop point. You better sneak them in quick, because James is typing. He's typing.
I was gonna say I'm probably gonna type this by the delay they actually get it. So we'll see. But we have a couple more. Dr. Professor Sir asked, how do you guys handle the unmotivated player? They're all on board with concepts and seem ready to go. They completely fail to save to really bring it, if you know what I mean. This is a hard one because I think it depends on a lot of different things. But sort of a broad strokes answer is make sure that they have something to be motivated about. Like we talked about, find things that their character cares about. Like you said, they're into the concepts. Try and directly tie their concept into the game so that they have something to fight for, something to go for. If they still don't really engage, maybe in a session 0 or just talk to them like, hey, what would you find to be more fun? Obviously don't do this during the game. But like, hey, it doesn't seem like you're like super interested. What would you like to see? Or what do you think would interest you some more? I think kind of trying to get an idea of what they're looking for in a game to maybe get them really excited. But again, also trying to find, to make sure that they have something to be motivated about.
I've also seen, this is really important, some players don't like to be involved. That is going to sound ridiculous. There are some players who want to be at the table. They want to interject every once in a while, but they are actually happy to just be hanging out and take their turn in combat. So you got to decide what kind of player they are. And if you mean not bring it by, they're late, or they don't have their character sheet ready, or they are deterring the game, that's a different conversation then. As you play with this person, you're like, they really don't just interact a lot. They really don't chime in. I promise you, some people don't want to, and that is the way they have fun at D&D. Just identify that.
Exactly. Like talking to them and stuff. Because another thing is occasionally asking them, oh, so-and-so, what is your character doing? Just because they may not interject, but they may be interested in, they may want to, or maybe they're too nervous. I've had that happen where people are like, I was a little too nervous to talk. I ran a game and I'm like constantly asking the player. And then by the middle and the end, they're like, really getting into it because they know it's okay.
They get used to it.
They get used to it.
And when you do this, when you're in games, throw your spotlight to somebody else.
Yeah.
So in my games, I will do what you said and kind of round robin. But I also, as a player, if I'm like, wow, that person hasn't talked in a while, I'll go. And then I look to Rudy and I ask him, why would they do that? As a player, I throw the spotlight to another player.
Because it brings me in on it.
And then we have an interaction and our characters have a kind of a bond. So
because your character would probably ask my character, even though I don't know, but I'm like, I gotta come up with something.
Right. So
Savad Sanctum says, I'm slowly but surely making progress on my Amerigo campaign book because of you guys. Any general advice going forward? If you mean general advice on making progress on your campaign book, you're not going to like this.
You're not going to, because I'm going to say the same thing.
But you got to write every day. You got to write whether or not you're feeling it. You got to write things you're not inspired about. You got to work on it. You got to keep doing it. You got to give yourself a schedule. You got to figure out what works for you. You got to make deadlines. Again, I know that that's not usually the answer, but there's no secret. It's you got to sit down and you got to grind it out. It sounds like you're doing that, which is great. But I wish I could say, well, you know, I found this really good tea that just gives me great ideas. But if that were the case, I'd probably sell it to you and not. Yeah, I'd use it all the time, and then I'd sell it to you instead of telling you where to buy it. But yeah, if you have a more specific question, we might be able to get to it. But I mean, as far as general making progress.
Well, I'll tell you that here's the biggest thing. Right now, your campaign world doesn't have a community. So this is what I've seen before. This is what I mean by not having a community. I don't know about it. I don't know about the concept. If the first time I learn about it, you drop this 300-page book on me, I'm probably not going to learn about it. Dragon Grin, the book that we're publishing, A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin, we have been posting interest posts and various things for years. And we slowly released a little bit here and there about the world. So my recommendation to you, and this is what I give everybody, I don't know why, I just came up with it one day, so there's no real rhyme or reason. Creativity is funny that way. Sometimes things don't have to matter. One race, that's your job, is to do about a page on one race in your world and finish it, and then release it. Have someone look at it and edit it. We can talk about it. Then release it.
But yeah, share it with a community. Share it
in Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. And that's it. One race. And then choose another one thing and another one thing. And then run a game in the world. What do you mean? I don't have it ready. The first Dragon Grin game we ran would not match the Dragon Grin we're writing in this book. The point of running games in it is, one, to have fun and build relationships and play RPGs. But two, I'm telling you, there's no better world building than running a game, because the players are going to make up stuff and ask stuff that you never would think of. So that's why you probably won't like the advice. Don't in a vacuum, right? In a vacuum, don't create a 300-page book and then go, here, because I'm not invested in it. I don't know you. I don't know the world. A piece at a time. Write a race. Don't focus on a class. Then write a little city. Just what is the city? What's cool about it? Just release that. Slowly start building your world. That would be my recommendation.
And then this will be the last one.
Oh, snap.
Simply based on the fact that we're running out of time, or have run out of time. Don asked, how do you deal with the social contract of a party? I haven't actually read this question yet, so I don't. I personally allow a bit of inter-party fighting for ideals if it's productive, but with the enthusiastic players, it can quickly derail as a session. So you bring up, specifically, you mentioned the social contract. And a lot of times with the people I play with, when I play with my best friends, when I play with Tim and Matt and Barker and Cassie and my home game, we're all kind of on the same page with that social contract, where it's rare that we're going to fight. I'll kind of make sure that my story lines up to some degree with other stories so that we're not immediately at odds, unless it's interesting. And like you said, doesn't go too far.
Right.
If your players take it too far, or it often seems to be that they're just constantly at odds and the game's not going forward because they're just fighting about who was on what side of what war, you can either lean into that and make the campaign about it.
Yep.
Or have a talk and say, hey, guys, this isn't really furthering the campaign. I'm not telling you to change what your character is, but maybe consider doing your best not to bring it up all the time. You know what I mean? I have plenty of friends that I don't talk to them about politics. In fact, I don't talk to anybody about politics.
Yeah, me either.
But I know
religion.
There are plenty of people that I disagree greatly on those two things, but we're still friends because we don't bring them up. Just like that, maybe have a conversation with the players like, hey, this isn't really productive. It just seems to devolve into an actual real life argument every time.
Right.
You didn't say that, but I could see it being that.
That's kind of the thing, yeah.
Or it's just PvP every session. I'm like, if that's what they love, let them do that. But if it's just derailing the campaign at every turn and the other players aren't enjoying it, say, hey, maybe we just leave that out of it. Like you said, that social contract of, we're just not going to do that.
So the gang has an argument. When I go into an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I realize that everyone is chaotic evil.
Yes.
I get that they're all going to lie to each other and cheat each other and ruin each other's plans, because that's the social contract.
You know what you're getting yourself into.
You know what you're getting into, because the theme of the show is human garbage that runs a bar. So if that fits the theme of your campaign, then it's not a good idea. If I was like, hey, Mac, Charlie, guys, do you have to argue? Then there's no show. So you're not running, I'm guessing you're not running It's Always Sunny, but I would actually use that example with the players in real life and just say, hey, in It's Always Sunny, they argue, and that's the point. That's the humor. It's the story. Here, I want to go for something else. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's just all about that. Like you said, we talked about this. The idea is in a movie or a TV show, you don't see the things that the main character does that don't have an effect on the story. They don't watch them sleep at night. You tend not to see them shower unless it's important to the story.
Right.
Unless they're crying in the shower, washing off the blood they just got on them.
Sure.
That's those arguments. Yes, they might disagree. And yes, basically, but if it doesn't matter, it shouldn't come up in the game because that's not a good story. It's just an argument.
Right.
Hopefully that helps at all.
I hope it does. And there's also a level of just letting it slide. Something you talked about earlier that I kind of wanted to mention, which is Chris Perkins is the master of this. If someone makes a joke in game, he will take it as though he takes the core concept of it and he uses it in the game. A great example is it was one of the PAX games and the players made the joke trying to figure out if they were in a bad part of town. And they were like, is it a seedy part of town? And he goes, yeah. And they jokingly were like, all right, well, I roll the windows up on the wagon like you would in a bad part of town. Expertly, he says, okay, so you're on guard and you fortify the wagon.
You close the shades maybe or whatever.
You close the shutters and you sort of, he takes what they mean by their colloquialism and he inserts it into the actual game instead of like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
There's no windows.
So it always pushes it forward.
Right. That's a cousin to what you're saying. But the idea is if they're arguing, there's another way to. Well,
you excited? No. Well, I was just going to say, if they're arguing, the idea that somebody overhears them and has an opinion too. It's an encounter. That
is the way that I would do it. I would say having an NPC, this is dangerous, but having an NPC around who's maybe a little bit above the players or on the same level also chime in can tick one of the players off.
Mm-hmm.
So if this was a problem and I talked to them at a game, I would probably have an NPC have a third opinion. That would be, they're like, no, the, Montagues, no, the Capulets, no, the Montagues. And I'd say, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because we all know the Queen's a doppelganger.
Exactly. And it's like, what?
Yeah. And it's like, well, that's and then you kind of take this, you're both right. Because story reason, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
I think if you counted the number of times we said that in the stream, it would equal the number of dollars we made on the Kickstarter.
Well, I think because a lot of the questions required they were very good questions. I think
great questions.
They were very open-ended. So a lot of times we're like, hey, you asked this specific question, but I would actually handle it this way. So that's why I think there was just a lot.
I do agree. Who was that question?
That was somebody. Don asked that.
Oh, I think we already gave you a giveaway.
Did give him something already.
So Don, I would have given you another giveaway. So we're going to wrap it up, but for the next, say, couple of seconds, if you put in the comments of this video your favorite thing that you're looking forward to about A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin.
In the live chat.
In the live chat.
Just making sure.
In the live chat. If you type in the live chat, one of the things that you're most looking forward to specifically from the book, you will get a free copy of Be a Better Game Master's Campaign Master, Book 1, Building the World.
I love saying the full name of that book.
Be a Better Campaign Master, Book 1, Building the World, Part 2, the collaboration. The soundtrack, the movie, the ride.
A lot of people have, some people have mentioned that My 30-Day World, they're like, it's really cool. It's too bad it's ending. And I just want to stress to everyone that it doesn't have to go away. I want to, maybe outline a world with My 30-Day World. There's nothing wrong with still posting it in the AbTab group, with using it for your own stuff so that you can, show your players what you have or come up with a world. It's not going away. It's not active necessarily, but use that hashtag as much as you want. Go in there, come up with new questions, share your world, all of that stuff. Still absolutely on the table.
And as much as this has been obviously linked to A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, we hope to do this in the future again. So this is not going to be the only time we do this. We hope to do this again, hopefully annually, I would guess. But yeah. So let's see. How many PDFs do we owe people?
So, the Mapnomicon, the Elders, I'm assuming don't know. Is that a thing in the book? People are just saying stuff in the chat.
Can you?
I don't know if he means
that.
John Harrow says the bleak effects, which is totally fair.
Okay, John.
We're gonna go through a bunch of them and then say that because there's a bunch of them.
So you get one. We'll go. Yeah.
Ben Buckner says definitely the map/regional maps.
Ben
Clark, the culture options. Super good point.
Yep.
Zero Cage. I can't pick just one.
Oh, you gotta
pick.
I'm sorry. One. Let's check. I'm sorry. The judges said no on that. There, you're gonna have to actually. Give
those
us
elder killer bat thingies. There he goes. Wait.
Oh, yeah. Doomsayers.
No, killer bat-like thingies. Yeah, I guess probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
He knows this back book better than we do, Tim. Madronami.
I'm cracking this open just to do a toast.
Danny, my favorite thing I'm looking forward to is how we can customize the new races to the land. Mark says the behemoths. I lost my spot again.
Zero, you don't have just one chance. Come up with something. It's like an open book test. Just go to the link in the description.
I don't know, pick something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can literally just tell us anything you read on the page.
Josh says the races.
Extra points if you actually like it.
Dante says definitely looking forward to all the monsters. I'm a sucker for monsters. Don, faction building, but of course he already got a book. But thank you, Don, for replying anyway. True Mate, The Wonders of Dragongrin.
Ooh, good one.
The Shark Surfer, looking forward to all the behemoths and the book overall. Hey, that's perfect.
This guy knows what I'm talking about.
Shark Surfer.
You're going to see the final behemoth tomorrow.
Micah says, hard to choose between Tome Hearts, Bleak Effects, and the overall tone. Hey, that's fair. That's 3 right there. Chad says, it looks like all 39 people have responded. Thank you, 39 people, for responding in the chat. Chad Stevens was the one I said. He said, using the toolkit sections to make all the new stuff.
Ooh.
Danny Ort, I want to know. Oh, I think I put him here already. Yes, but
I want to know how Dragongrin links to the Frozen King. I'll answer that while you continue to go down that list. So the adventure kit, Oath of the Frozen King, takes place in Varnholm, which is a region inside of Dragongrin. So that is the Frozen King will be one of the threats that is in the realm currently. So that is how it takes place. The adventure kits will all have a location in one of our campaign worlds. And that particular one takes place in Dragongrin, in the region of Varnholm, where the Frozen King was raised from his icy grave. So that is how it's linked in. It's basically just a zoomed in place in the realm.
I think that's most of the people that were in the chat. We're mostly... I think we're done with all that. We have a lot of people. We're not actually going to read every single
I was going to say, yeah, but we'll stop that right now. 6:27 p.m. Eastern.
So, email
that was
Absolute
like
Tabletop.
Boy band kissing fingers.
AbsoluteTabletop@gmail.com with the subject line winner. And make sure you mention your YouTube name, because we need to obviously reconcile it. Obviously, anybody that sees this video could just email us. So make sure you mention the name you see on YouTube so that we can reconcile it with who you are.
We have made a list of everybody, so that'll be fun if people are like, "Hi, I'm
a winner. I got one.
I'm Saucy Jack. Hashtag Jack the Ripper." What?
DBJ says, I'm continuing this 30-day challenge with a creators conclave fueled by Absolute Tabletop as video panels using the 30-day challenge as a foundation.
I love that.
That's exactly what we're looking for. It doesn't have to go away. It's here to stay, and that's great. That's amazing.
So I don't know what the creators conclave. Yeah. Let's take it from the beginning. I don't know what the creators conclave is, but that sounds awesome. And if
you just post about it in the group, you got to check it out.
Oh, okay, I'll check it out.
At some point, I think it's been a thing. But.
If you're looking for people to participate, let us know, and we can also help you promote that and get people in there. So,
Josh thought the giveaway thing was a joke. Well,
no,
Josh,
no, it was not.
What is your favorite part of A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon?
I was going to say,
we sign off.
I will give you a final shot at this. Don't blow it, Josh. It's a jumper at the buzzer. So
turnaround J from half court. That's not a thing. It doesn't happen.
It is a thing.
It's not happen.
Yes, a turnaround.
Not a turnaround J from half court. It's over the head.
I think it could.
It doesn't go in if
you're gonna uncork a one-timer from center ice.
Uncork a one-timer. That's a good one.
I'm gonna uncork a one-timer.
So we wait with bated breath for Josh. Oh, he already said his. The races.
Oh yeah, you got him on the list.
Oh, I got him on the list. Sorry, Josh. I assumed
this is a touch screen, and it just weirded me out. James has a Surface, and I forgot. I was like, oh,
I assume based on the fact that you said that you didn't respond.
The
so
Surface is
that's
a
on you.
touchscreen?
Yeah, you can draw on it. It's
I
a tablet. You
forgot.
can draw.
Oh,
It's got a pen.
hot Gandhi.
Pretty good. Yeah. So Mark asked if we could give him. Oh, what's the mail address again? That's okay. absolutetabletop@gmail.com.
Subject line, winner. Again, your YouTube name helps because we're going to match the YouTube name against the list that James has so tirelessly
More so
created.
than it helps, it is very important because if you email us and don't tell us who you are, you're not getting a PDF most likely, to avoid everybody just emailing us with the word winner in there.
To avoid the thing that we like to call fraud.
So I think that is it for us, and we ought to do a toast.
I think we absolutely do. It's been a while.
It
It's
has
been a
been.
while.
It feels like
It's
it.
been 30 days of world building
It has.
since we did a toast. No toast in those videos because we understood they were going to be watched in succession. And,
And yeah, the toast was
that'll make it
longer
like an
than some of
extra
the
minute.
videos.
So yeah,
Keith got a real big kick out of Fraud. That's a good one for us.
fraud.
No, Tom, you don't need
Also-
a channel. You just got to put that your name is Tom Knapp. So I put it on there. It's not, you have it. We're making this really complicated. I'm sorry.
Ponzescami. That's how we do it.
So Tom, if you have a favorite thing while we do this toast, please throw it in there. As long as you email me and say that your name is Tom Knapp, you'll be on the
What
list.
we mean by YouTube name is typically probably your Gmail name.
Whatever's in the chat, just so that, like we talked about, sorry. This is, we maybe we'll do this different in the future. But
Did we look at Zero Cages? Real one?
we did, yeah, he's on there. Yeah, we stopped reading them because we started responding, and we had a lot more than I really
yes,
thought. So
You're on there, Zero. Zero cool, you hacker.
no, Tom, you're in the chat. Just say something you like about the book in the chat, and even if you don't have it, I say channel, but just like whatever name you have on YouTube. I don't know if I'm making this complicated. Just say Matt Brown McCon really wants to do the toast. We're gonna do the toast. Throw it in there if you can, Tom. If not, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. So he's trying. Okay. How do we start? Do I start?
You start it.
Oh, okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna. He got it. He got it.
My breath is baited. I just fraud. Keith. Keith Foyston, you have been indicted of the grand fraud.
Fraud. How do you plead?
Fraudy.
They are calling for the toast.
All right.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
And may you conquer everything you undertake.
Slancha.
Oh, Slancha.
I almost said fraud.
Wow.
But I thought after so many people asked for it, I'm not going to ruin it. Ruin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what? Everybody just ran and got their drink, and then we held them. They were sitting there like a cartoon, and they were just like, I need water.
Like spilling like a real well-animated Disney glass of wine. I watched All Dogs Go to Heaven the other day with my daughter. There were a lot of different
alcoholic beverages.
acceptable practices in children's media.
When that movie came out?
15, 20 years ago. I'm like, they're gambling, they're drunk, and they're smoking all in one scene. And I was like, and they murder a dog in cold blood. I'm like, they hit him with a car because he's too drunk to know. I'm like, it is a piece of work. But Don Bluth's animation is just second to none. So,
with that said, we're signing off now.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
All dogs go to Dragon Grid.
All dogs go to Dragon Grid too. There's a really cool quote that's oh man, I'm gonna ruin it, but I'm gonna say what I think it is anyway.
You want me to Google it and make you look good?
No, that'd be way better, but I was gonna, and he says,
I'll do it all.
If all dogs don't go to heaven, I want to go where they are. Boom! It's true. No, that
was pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's from Civ 6. Obviously, it was a real quote that somebody said, and then they used in Civ 6. So Sean Bean said it, but that's not important. So goodbye, everybody.
Yes. And until next time, may your dice roll high.